Hello everyone, it's Dr. Horowitz and I'm here to introduce you to our next module. I call it Active Listening, the Antidote for Defensive Behavior. Now up until this point, we have been looking at this strategy called active listening, and most of you have agreed that it seems to have some value. It helps to clarify conversations. There is a step-by-step process that each of you has demonstrated you understand very well, and you even had a chance to practice with someone, whether it was a family member, a spouse, friend, or colleague, and most of you had a similar reaction, and that was that the easiest part of this process was in fact following the step-by-step. What most of you agreed was a little more difficult was trying to keep it sounding as if it were more natural and maybe not as rigid as the steps would indicate it to be. And that's very true. My comment to that is that this is the kind of skill, like many of the others we've had, that requires practice in order for you to feel more comfortable. And at this point in our learning, we really want to, one, ensure that we understand what those steps to practicing active listening are, the purpose of it, which is, as we've indicated and you've learned in earlier modules, to gain more input, to let another person know that you're actually engaged through your body language and your the phrases that you use that indicate a genuine listening to whatever their issue is. Now, a key point about that purpose is it's not about agreeing with another person. That's not where the power or magic of active listening really reveals itself. It's really just the process itself of letting someone else know you're genuinely interested, you respect them as an individual, respect what they have to say, respect their point of view, even while you may not agree with any of it. And if you're in a decision-making role, you may in fact not reach a decision that may even be appealing to that other person. But it's this process of listening genuinely and demonstrating that you're listening that really translates to another person's feeling your empathy, your respect, and people find that even more appealing than agreeing with them. So up until now, you've used some examples of talking to your wife about perhaps where to go to dinner, or a colleague about a particular issue, and you were concentrating, as you should have, on making sure you followed each step. You paraphrased what you heard, you summarized, you asked clarifying questions, you got to watch the mom Francesca and her daughter Danny using active listening in order to hear one another, particularly the mom hearing Danny in her request to drive the family car. And again, in that scenario, a decision was never reached, but every single one of you agreed that that relationship was well maintained and would be for the future because of the respect and genuineness that the mom in particular shared through her active listening. Now that, as hard as some of this is to practice, is in some sense the easy part. Because remember, we're dealing with certain situations, in particular when we're handling an individual situation, when you're conveying what we call bad news. And you had an opportunity to do that and write letters relating to that, and you also followed the steps very well, and did not encounter at this point defensive behavior. This is where the rubber meets the road. What do you do when, in spite of your best efforts, that other person triggers your own reactions? That other person reacts to you in ways that are unacceptable, offensive, very difficult for you to remain calm and try to reach your true purpose, which is to have that individual hear your message and not have emotions into fear. And that is where the ultimate skill about active listening comes in. And again, I want to emphasize, this is not something you need to do on a daily basis or on relatively minor issues. You really want to use active listening in this situation when it really counts. When you have that employee who you have to share unpleasant or negative news that may have a very negative impact, up to and including firing someone from a company, demoting someone, having to dock them certain benefits. The list goes on. And these can invite and are emotional settings in which you should expect that maybe a particular word or phrase you used, or just something the other person heard in you or in your discussion that triggered something in them, and they, quote, went off. And by the way, you too, as an active listener, are human, and there will be that occasion where you yourself will just lose it. Now, this is not the crime of the century. It makes you human. But we do want to always remember a basic cardinal rule about communication, that once you communicate something, you just can't ever take it back. So you just don't want to do that too often. But remember to give yourself a break. Know that you're human. You also have triggers that can be set off and result in your own loss of self-management. So that being said, we're going to see some scenarios in which you'll have a chance to observe an employee and a manager exchanging information where the manager in scenario one is not very knowledgeable, as you are, in active listening, and commits many flaws, and which all result in the employee becoming very defensive. That's to demonstrate to you what happens if you don't use this kind of a strategy in an important communication. That, of course, is followed up by a more appropriate conversation by that same manager, same employee, handled through the skill of active listening. So stay tuned to a very enlightening experience in which I call, and what I call active listening, the antidote for defensive behavior.